Ukrainian drone strikes are pushing Russian fuel exports to their lowest level since 2020, hitting one of the Kremlin's most important sources of revenue. Since August 16, Russia's 38 refineries have been attacked, some of them multiple times. Among them is the giant Ryazan plant near Moscow, capable of processing 340,000 barrels of oil a day. Energy analysts say more than 1 million barrels per day of refining capacity has been disrupted. Diesel exports, Russia's key product for global markets, are now projected to fall to their lowest monthly level in 5 years. Russia is the world's second largest diesel exporter, with about half of its shipments going to Turkey and the rest to Africa and Brazil. As the EU and UK have banned Russian fuel, Moscow has relied on these markets to keep revenues flowing. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says these strikes are the most effective sanctions. Fires at refineries, oil terminals and depots that cut directly into Moscow's war chest. Last week, Ukrainian drones flew more than 1,000 kilometers to hit major facilities on Bashkortostan and Volgograd. The campaign is also having domestic consequences. Gasoline shortages are spreading across Russian regions. Wholesale prices have jumped more than 40% this year, and reports say even some occupied territories are running dry. President Donald Trump has made a sharp and unexpected turn on Ukraine, suddenly declaring that with Europe's support, Kyiv could win the war and reclaim all occupied territories. The New York Times writes that Trump offered no explanation for this reversal, and European officials fear he may simply be stepping back from the conflict he once promised to end within days. For months, Trump has swung between criticizing Volodymyr Zelensky, courting Putin, and now voicing his most pro-Ukrainian statement yet. But as the New York Times points out, the bigger question is how Moscow will respond.
One of the many unknowns now is how Mr. Putin will react to Mr. Trump's shift. He had clearly calculated after the Alaska meeting that the president had no stomach for a continued conflict and no interest in donating billions more to the Ukrainian cause or letting American soldiers join a NATO peacekeeping force. So he may take solace in Mr. Trump's pullback, even if the American president is ultimately expressing some support for Ukraine. Or Mr. Putin may decide to amplify his attacks and his threats, figuring that time and mass will favor Russia.
United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres warned that Russia wants to create blackouts in Ukraine ahead of winter, speaking at a high-level UN Security Council meeting on Ukraine. He also voiced concern over nuclear safety, citing the precarious situation at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Ukraine's energy ministry reported that the Zaporizhzhia plant was recently cut off from the national power grid, leaving it dependent on emergency diesel generators. Officials called this as a serious breach of normal operating conditions and stressed that during the Russian occupation, the facility has faced repeated blackouts caused by shelling and damage to energy infrastructure. Guterres urged all countries to protect nuclear facilities and strictly adhere to international law. Days earlier, the 69th AIEA General Conference adopted a resolution demanding the immediate deoccupation of Zaporizhzhia MPP and its return to full Ukrainian control. Kyiv warns that renewed Russian attacks on energy infrastructure are designed to pressure civilians as temperatures fall. Ukrainian authorities say the incident underscores the persistent risks to the national grid and nuclear safety as winter approaches. Estonia warns NATO of urgent gaps in drone defenses. Along Estonia's border with Russia, authorities are extending fences, digging anti-tank ditches, and reinforcing bunkers in preparation for a potential conflict. But officials admit these defenses won't stop the immediate threat: drones and electronic warfare. From the Baltic to the Black Sea, NATO's eastern members are facing the spillover of Moscow's war in Ukraine. The recent incursions of some of 20 Russian drones into Poland expose serious gaps in NATO's air defenses. Fighter jets worth millions scrambled, but the low-cost drones slipped through and crashed in the countryside. Defense ministers from the EU's eastern border are preparing to discuss plans for a drone wall along the bloc's eastern flank. Estonia's defense minister, Hanno Pevkur, said that while NATO is well equipped to track missiles, drones remain a far greater challenge.
Drones are not mosquitoes, so you cannot have an electronic wall where you can stop the mosquitoes. So drones are very sophisticated. We have different type of drones. We have intelligence drones, we have reconnaissance drones, you have multi-rotor drones, you have drones like Shaheds, you have drones like Reaper type, very high altitude. So everything is drones. So this is why we have to understand that fighting against these drones needs to have also the very complex approach.
Lithuania is asking Spain to station more fighter jets in the country as part of NATO's Baltic air policing mission. Defense Minister Dovilė Sakalienė said the request will be discussed with her Spanish counterpart. The move comes after Lithuania's parliament approved new rules allowing the army to react faster to drones in national airspace following recent Russian incursions. Together with Estonia, Latvia, Finland and Poland, Lithuania has also appealed to the European Commission for extra funding to strengthen EU border security against the growing drone threat. The United Nations says Russia has carried out systematic torture of Ukrainian civilians since the start of the full-scale invasion. A new UN report documents abuse in more than 100 detention centers in Russia and occupied Ukraine. Former detainees described mock exhaustions, electric shocks, and being forced to stand in painful positions for hours. Some of these methods proved fatal. Investigators say the torture was not isolated. It was widespread, organized, and could not have happened without the knowledge of those in charge. The report is based on interviews with over 200 former detainees. Many said beating and humiliation were part of daily life. The UN believes thousands of Ukrainians are still being held, with at least 400 cases confirmed and the real number likely far higher. Russia has denied mistreating prisoners, but the UN says evidence shows civilians and prisoners of war alike have suffered. A mysterious bronze statue of President Donald Trump holding hands with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein has appeared in a park near the US Capitol. The artwork is titled Best Friends Forever. A plaque at this base reads, "We mark the long connection between President Donald Trump and his closest friend Jeffrey Epstein." It was placed on the National Mall in Washington by an anonymous group known for critical sculptures of Trump in the past. The Washington Post reports this latest stunt comes as Trump continues a legal battle with the Wall Street Journal. Earlier this summer, the newspaper published claims about a crude birthday note Trump allegedly sent to Epstein in 2003. Trump has sued the paper, its reporters, and its own Rupert Murdoch, seeking $10 billion in damages. Jeffrey Epstein was first charged with sex crimes in 2007, accused of trafficking underage girls for himself and powerful associates. He served just 13 months in a prison under a controversial plea deal. In 2019, he was arrested again, but weeks later he was found dead in his New York jail cell in what medical examiners ruled a suicide. That's all for now. For more content, please subscribe.